if you're at the average. Okay, that would be a wash. So, any property that's valued above the average would see an increase, because if you had a $500,000, you'd still only get the $80,000 exemption. So now your value would be down to 20 times 1663. Plus vacant parcels, vacant land would be taxed at the higher rate and wouldn't be eligible for an exemption. Nobody lives there. So properties below the average would see a decrease in their taxes or a lower increase in their taxes, but properties above would see a decrease, would see an increase. So that's one thing. This is popular in cities that have a lot of apartment buildings or a lot of non-resident people, like down the Cape, where you can tax the snowbirds, but you don't. Well, I guess you don't call them snowbirds in the summertime if they're down the Cape. But anyway, you can tax the non-residents.
Beach people.
And help the voters. I mentioned here the residential exemption has been adopted by only a handful of communities: Boston, Cambridge, Chelsea, and Brookline. And basically that's that. You could go 10%, you could go 5%, you could go whatever you wish to give some relief, but I gave the example of using a 20% residential. On the commercial exemption, an exemption of up to 10% of a property valuation can be granted to commercial, not industrial, properties that meet the requirements set forth under the law. To qualify, eligible businesses, I should say properties, must have occupied the property as of January 1st, 2009, and must have had no more than 10 employees during the previous calendar year, as certified by the Division of Employment and Training. And the property must have a value of less than $1 million. A business which is just one of several businesses within a commercial building would not be eligible for the exemption unless every business in the building qualified as well. So if you have a strip mall with 6 stores and 5 of them qualify and 1 doesn't, there's no exemption there. All right? If you have a mom and pop type store where you only have family working there and you don't report to the Department of Employment and Training, that wouldn't qualify because it has to be certified by DET. The commercial exemption is a good idea, but it's not written well, and we're unaware of anyone in town that qualifies for it. Basically, that's what the board has to tell you. Now it's up to you.
Okay, we'll start with questions from the board. Any questions from the board members?
I'd just like to know, you said commercial exemption would be a good idea if the law was written well. Why would it be a good idea?
Well, it would be a good idea to give a break to the small commercial, to the small business person, rather than, well, let's put it this way. You could tax Teradyne and give a break to the small people in town. You could help the small businesses in town. Didn't mean to single out one. I'll probably hear from Teradyne. But
You just use that as an example.
Definitely. We don't want to tax Teradyne. Any other questions?
Okay, I'll open the questions to the floor. Raise your hand. Once selected, go to the podium, name and address, and you'll be allowed to speak for 2 minutes.
Joe?
I wasn't talking to Joe. I was talking to the Yes, Ms.
Hi, Joe Tassone, Finance
Mr.
Director.
Tassone.
Mr. Tyne talked about the levy limit, and it's one of our responsibility is to notify the board of the excess levy capacity, using the tax rate of 1347, as close as we can get to the levy limit without going over the levy limit at that tax rate. We have an excess capacity of 22,904.75. That is as close as we can get to the levy limit. I do have forms that the Board of Selectmen needs to sign off on that they're aware of this. Because I am going to the QR tomorrow with some paperwork, and I would like to take this. And the gentleman would be so kind as to sign this.
We'd be glad to, Joe. Just pass it on.
I just think it would great. There's a way to sign electronically, but I don't know if you can set up.
We're here, we can sign.
All right. Well, I have two versions, just in case.
I thought you were going to say, I don't know how proficient you are at signing things electronically, but thank you for saying it.
Anyone in the audience have questions for either the board or the
Mr. Chair.
assessors? Speaking for yourself. Mr. O'Leary.
Steve O'Leary, 15 Mead Road. I'm opposed and have been for a number of years dual tax rate. I think it's counterproductive at this particular point in juncture in relation to what we're trying to do and accomplish as a community, as far as attracting more industrial growth until we are able to secure sewerage. We're probably not going to be in a position to fairly even consider a dual tax rate. Currently, based upon what was presented this evening by the Board of Assessors, only less than 12.5% of the tax base is commercial industrial in the town of Mount Vernon. Close to 88%, 87.5% is residential. And as evidenced by the information provided by Mr. Tyne, if the board would decide to shift even a 10% factor, the average household, the most we would save the average residential household owner is $82. And at the same time, there's an additional tax burden on the average commercial or industrial property to the tune of $1,059. That's just a 10% shift. A 25% shift, we can save our average taxpayer, residential taxpayer, $211, and our average commercial and industrial property owner would be $2,600 additional. And as the time pointed out, if we went to the max of 150%, it would be $426 savings to a residential homeowner, as opposed to a $5,200 increase in commercial industrial property owner. I think it's fair with its current design, the current makeup of our tax base is not conducive to promoting additional businesses to come to North Reading. In these particular economic times, I think it's more important for us for the pittance of a savings of $82 the residential tax base, opposed to an increase of $1,000 for commercial owners. I think it is counterproductive to try and keep our businesses in place. The business community has been extremely generous over the years I've been involved in North Reading as far as contributing to local charities and organizations. I think you're seeing a very difficult time right now as far as doing that. We saw just the arguments in relation to the Narissa youth services position. But they're finding it very difficult to philanthropically continue to fund that position. A lot of what's been raised is a direct result of the business community contributing, a major contributing factor to being able to fund that position for 2 years. So I think it's an inopportune time for us to consider doing that, and I would urge the members of the board who are eligible to vote on this matter to not act favorably on any change in tax classification.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Yes.
Thank you. Irene Collins, 1 Canterbury Lane. I'm the executive director of the North Reading Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here with several board members. And our commerce, we have several small business members in North
you. Anyone else? Mr. Yule?
Jeff Yule, 127 Pond Street, North Massachusetts. I'm not sure if I know how to say this or not. I spoke with the Attorney General's office today to get clarification on my role, my participation, and how I participate, and how I should not participate. And it was clearly stated to me that I cannot give an opinion, participate in deliberation, vote, or even offer an opinion as a resident. And that was the information that was given to me at this point. So I have this, regardless of what my views are, can't take it. So that was what was presented to me by Mark Kennedy's office.
Anyone else? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
Close the public hearing?
Oh, yes. I'll close the, anyone else want to speak? I'm going to close the public hearing. Okay, I declare the public hearing closed.
Ready to
Members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
as I think everyone in this room remembers back to last year, I was the lone vote in favor of a split tax rate 1 year ago. This year here, my vote will be different. It'll be in favor of a single tax rate. Simply put, the reason being is that considering the current economic climate and the impact that it's had on all businesses, especially small businesses, that'll be my reason for this year. And I stress this year, my vote will be for the single tax rate. My vote may change in subsequent years. I want to be clear on that. A lot will have to do with the economic conditions in the community, in the state, and in this country. But I think one thing that we as a community need to push is wastewater. I concur with Mr. O'Leary's comments that wastewater would most certainly, if it was implemented in town, and increase the commercial and industrial businesses that come into town. At that point, I probably will certainly be in favor of a split tax rate. It may come sooner than that, but I think wastewater is something that has to be pushed forward by this community and by this board. So, in a nutshell, this year here, my vote will be for a single tax rate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make a
Yes,
comment?
Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you very much. I am going to be voting for a single tax rate also. As I've always done in the past, I've always felt that I did not want to put the extra burden onto the business community, especially in, as Mr. Delaney has said, and other speakers, especially in this economic time. I do want to make one thing clear, though, you know, because I have heard my brother Selectmen say, well, maybe when sewage goes in, they would change. I'm not saying I wouldn't, but I don't think I would. Because just because sewage goes in doesn't mean a small store can afford the impact of a higher tax rate. But I'm not saying I would never vote for it, but at this point, I can't see anything that would make me vote to split that tax rate. So I'm going to be going on the tax rate of 1 also.
Thank you, Mr. Vino. I certainly do not support a split tax rate at this point. The town needs absolutely to build a larger commercial base. We've got property over at the Berry Center that's sitting there, and I think we don't need to send that kind of a message to potential developers and tenants, business tenants in town. So again, as I've supported in my tenure on the board, I will be voting for the CIP shift of 1. And with that, I will entertain, I think we have 5 motions.
Yeah, I
in
need
all.
the figures on this one here.
You have everything? All right.
I can read.
Can you read them?
Be better if Selectman Vino reads it.
Okay.
Just to